That's great. Welcome to Your Life Has Already Trained You, and Now Let Your Work Exist. My name is Bonnie Brown, and this is the Spark Joy Method. Welcome to the Masterclass today. So today is really actually about creating a safe space for us to re-examine actually what work is and what it isn't. And from that place, we're going to be able to re-identify and lock into your true identity so you can express yourself through your work and create your work in the world. So, yeah, I just want to say this actually straight up that this is not career advice. This is not start a business, though you may start a business, which is definitely what happened to me once I connected into my true identity, my true narratives. I realized actually I had a contribution to make. But this masterclass today it's not motivation, but it may be a bit of a reorientation so that you can think about work in a fresh new way. So I really just want to set the expectations as we kind of lock into this today. Yeah, so some of the expectations is that you don't actually need to make a decision today. There's no decision required. I just want you to sit back and really think about some of these concepts that I am about to share with you so that you can see if there's perhaps some truth in what I'm saying and how you could apply it to your own life, to your own career situation. Or, even just to the skills and the talents that you actually have. So, yeah, there's no fixing, no rushing. I just want you to be able to see clearly. And so I'm really going to be just kind of like brushing broad brush strokes and a painting to paint a new vision, a new picture of what work looks like in, today, right now, and how you can approach it with a fresh, be able to see it clearly through your own identity, through your own life, and what could be missing, or perhaps how you can approach it freshly. So yeah, it's just really interesting because, you don't actually need to reinvent yourself. You need to recognize what already exists. And so what already exists in terms of what skills you've got, what experience, what life's already trained you in, and how could that be applied in a fresh new way. So this masterclass today is really for capable, experienced people. People's work may no longer fit them, or perhaps they're feeling like they're just in a transition, that they're coming into, the end of a season. Maybe something's finished, something feels like it's become a bit stale or stagnant, or you could just be curious. You've heard about me. I'm Bonnie Brown. I'm your host, transformational coach, really a leadership teacher, and introducing concepts around work, identity, and what life's trained you in and creating enterprise from it. So what is work really? And I really want you to start at zero. So you can even just close your eyes right now while you listen to this if you like, maybe not if you're driving. But the forgotten definition of work. So work actually predates jobs, wages, and titles. Work is actually directed by human energy. It is something that really is like this thrust of energy. And sure, there's definitely, historically been, depending what worldview you've got, but, if we just play around with scripture, even if we go back to Genesis and the Torah or the Bible, that people, in the very beginning is that, when relationship was broken with God, that work became toil and they had to work hard at the earth. And so there's been like a disconnect. And so really this masterclass is an opportunity to perhaps, if you're toiling, if things feel hard, you're doing the hard graft, and you would actually like to leap over the hard graft and be able to do work that just felt more effortless and intrinsically connected to who you are. This masterclass today is really going to speak to you, and there's going to be some pieces of key wisdom and insights that are going to unlock you into a new season in your how you identify your identity in terms of work and how you approach it and how you see it. So yeah, just work was survival, it was contribution, and it was also meaning. And yeah, it's really interesting because a lot of names, I was thinking of that game Happy Families, and you have like Mr. and Mrs. Butcher, or you have the Smiths, which is like blacksmiths, and a lot of people were named after their their occupation. So their identity, their surname was kind of pulled from what they did. And it's interesting. My sister, she's married into a family and her name is now Fisher, and her husband loves fish. He has fish tanks. And I think that's like a really pure view of somebody who's got an intrinsic desire and a personal interest in something like fish. And just consequently, his name is Fisher. But that's not the case for all of us. Quite often we can be in work which is not connected to our family surname. We don't have a history in it, and perhaps we've fallen into it. My auntie a very long time ago, she fell into a relationship, and I kind of had this saying when I was younger where you could fall easily into a relationship, but you'd like a bad relationship, maybe a bad choice, and you'd have to fight your way to get back out of it. And I think that can be the same for our work. You could fall into the wrong type of work, and that's just your lot. That's what you're doing, or that's the sense perhaps in your own brain that you've just decided that they're stuck, or maybe you've financially built a fence, or you've been enveloped into some of those choices you've made. But I want to give you hope today that actually all of that could be dismantled, and it's not actually as challenging or as daunting as it may feel to you right now, like you've got no choice. So the first thing I want to actually dismantle is the thought that you have no options, that you have no choice. This is your career now. It's set. I don't care what age you are. You could change your career at 83 if you wanted. So, a job is actually just a container. And if you are in a job and perhaps you don't own that job, it's not a business, it's not an enterprise, and the work that you do within that job is an expression. Okay, so I want you to separate a job as a container and the work you do as an expression. It's two different things. Yeah, I just want to pause here because I want this to really land. If you had no memory of jobs or status, what would you naturally want to build, solve, tend, or offer? Think about that for a moment. Yeah, it's interesting because I often think many years ago in the 80s, there was a movie about a woman. She was in a car accident and she had amnesia, and she woke up and, her family, her husband was there, and she had no recollection, didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her life. And I think if in terms of your work or your career, if you had just a hypothetical amnesia and you had no recollection, like somebody had to actually tell you, Bonnie, this is what work is. You're going to leave the house. And, if we take it from a traditional point of view, which is a reality for a lot of people, and you're going to go and sit in a building for 40 hours a week, and this is what you're going to do. If you had no recollection, you didn't have that history there, would that resonate? Would that be something, if you just found it out, you'd be like, oh, that's fantastic. I'm so happy. Thank you for telling me that. I'm so happy that's what I do all week. I can't wait to get back to it and be rehabilitated so I can do it. Because I think the truth is that a lot of people, if they found out, they'll be like, I have no interest in that subject, or how did I end up on that path? And so this is what this masterclass really is about. It's a bit of a stop sign saying, hey, let's pause for a minute. Let's have a look at this and see if it still is in alignment. Is this your true narrative, the work that you're doing and expressing in the world? So most people don't need a new job. They actually just need a new relationship with their work. So I'm just going to move on to part 2, which is identity versus employment. And this can actually be quite a confusing subject, really, because how identity gets trapped in roles. And what I teach really is that employment provides a structure and a belonging, and then over time your identity can kind of get outsourced. So you can get very kind of lost from the true kind of energy, that life force of your identity, and then the role can become safety. And that's really very, very sad, especially because every human being has something innately powerful and energetic, this life force to do something valuable and make a contribution in terms of work, and and whatever that container looks like, whether you're employed by somebody and you're expressing it there, or whether you are creating your own container in terms of enterprise, a business, you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're a thought leader, you're creating something, but we want to get that life force, that energy to flow through it, because it's going to make everything a lot more better. And people, I mean, it'll make your own experience of living better, because you spend a lot of time each day doing this work and contributing. So yeah, I just want to actually name some of the symptoms. And I say symptoms because you may have a full calendar, but it's an empty authorship. And you are not the author of some of those items that are on your calendar. And actually, if you were to sit down in the still place and re-look at some of those items on your calendar, you may not choose them. And I want you to have full authorship over your calendar and over your energy and that life force that's coming through your work. So having competence even without ownership. So you're extremely competent. You've harnessed a set of skills and you're very successful and recognized with these skills. But the competence that you've got there's no ownership. You don't own it. If tomorrow, wherever you are, you got snipped from that place, perhaps for a lot of people, what that would look like, obviously, you would have an employment contract, but you are also earning income. If you're an employee or in a situation where you are competent and you're providing, your skills, you're hiring your skills, but you don't have ownership of that. The tap got turned off, you're incredibly vulnerable of those skills you've got because you don't own the container. So it's like success without sovereignty. You're not sovereign over your success. And so that's what I want to invite you into, to begin to think, how could I take my competence and my success and then get these 3 pillars, which would be you would have full authorship over those skills and how they got attributed to the timeline of your life during the year. So you're in full authorship of your calendar, and then your competence, you could choose what container, how that ownership of that, the outworking of that, where that would be. So it becomes less scary when you think you already have all these abilities. So you already have, you're contributing at the moment authorship to something, and you have competence, but perhaps you don't have the ownership, and you have the success without the sovereignty. And so it's about building out some of those other things where you would continue to, if you chose to, if you actually do, you're like, hey, Bonnie, I actually really enjoy the work that I do, but perhaps creating a foundation and a container where you would be calling the shots on those 3 things. Because if you get to the stage in life where, you can actually see this kind of quiet grief that is like, I'm good at this, but this isn't mine. And I think if somebody has been promoted, or if you've experienced a time where you've been overlooked and perhaps somebody else, has kind of like soared past you and maybe you've got the same skills, that can be quite disappointing. And especially because, that you're valuable, but you're also replaceable. And so I want to solve that for you, that you would no longer be replaceable, but you would be irreplaceable, in your work. So when identity is tied to employment, leaving the role could actually feel like disappearing. And maybe some of you want to disappear. But, for some people, that can be a real sense of grief. It's like when people get laid off. If we take the financial part of it out of the equation, just the rupture of their identity being tied to their employment, and that shift and change can be really disorientating. And so, leaving the room, you'll just feel like you've disappeared. So point number 4 is, why rupture did it break you? It formed you. So I absolutely adore rupture. I don't enjoy it happening, but I am really a guide in a high-level private mentorship to support people who have even voluntarily stepped into a rupture season through life events. And those things can be, death, divorce, gosh, it could be weddings, birth, like pregnancy, parenthood, all of these or redundancy, these ruptures, these things that happen in life, and we can't predict them. It happens to everybody because we're human. But these ruptures can be if you can, get somebody alongside you while you're going through the rupture, you'll realize actually this rupture is not breaking me, it's actually forming me. And because the rupture will strip away any false identity. It's kind of like having, the rug pulled out from under you. It feels like you're on solid ground and then you're not. And then what remains, if you can go through that, and I'm excited because any leader who has grown into their fullness of their potential has gone through a rupture. It's part of forming the fullness of your full potential, of your full identity. And then what remains is capacity. Yes, it's uncomfortable because it's going to put you right into pull you out of basically your comfort zone. And then you will be faced with your capacity. And you can shorten that whole process. For me, that process took 8 years, and I didn't have somebody to walk through the process with me. And that's why I'm such a good, high-level mentor for people who are going through this, because I can help collapse that time for you so that you can step forward in your capacity rather than like the grief and the confusion of the rupture. It's not going to break you, but I do want it to form you into the gold that's there, And so just to touch on, if you really just still kind of scratching your head, you're like, what's Bunny talking about? What ruptures? What could this be? So it could be burnout, divorce, redundancy, relocation, and endings that weren't chosen. So I'm sorry if you're going through any of those things at the moment, but there is they're incredibly valuable. If you'll pause for a minute, there is gold in there, I promise you. So some of the skills that you're being upskilled in right now, if you have gone through some of those, or maybe you can think back to history where you have gone through those. You'll be learning decision making under pressure, boundary formation, discernment, negotiation, rebuilding system, emotional regulation, long-term thinking. And so life's already trained you, and you're just never shown how to actually place that training into work you own. And that's what the Spark Joy Method's about. And my high-level mentorship, Creme de la Creme, is about actually placing your work. Let's place those, what life's already trained you in, and get that training into work that you own. So the difference between being used and owning. So this is really a contrast. So the used experience, and nobody wants to be used, is that you're paid for your time, and there is a place for it. We've all gone through it at certain times, but you're extracted by systems. There's no authorship. It's capping your value. It can even limit your growth, because you would, how you would grow if you're developing your own authorship, you're developing your own body of work over a year, versus if you are in a container, someone else's container, someone else's work container is going to be very different. So owned experience, you will be gaining perspective. You'll be building out your own intellectual property, which you can have forever. I mean, there's many examples which I get into in my Creme de la Creme training, which is how people have developed their own IP, which pays them forever. It pays them into their retirement. And, this is like the best type of investment you can make by taking your energy, your life force, what life's training you in now, and developing a body of work, intellectual property that will carry through. It's got longevity to it. You'll be developing, with your own experience, method, authority, and then all of that compounds over time. And nobody can fire you from your own work like that. So yeah, most people are actually being used for their experience, and they're not owning it. And so I don't want that to be you. Now, this is the exciting bit. This is why money follows ownership. And I came into this business. I actually ended up becoming aware of an American businesswoman who had a business with 38 employees. She had her own authorship. So when I say authorship, she was in charge of this business with 38 employees and doing $40 million worth of sales. And so I actually ended up getting to work alongside her and learn why money follows ownership. And income follows ownership, not effort. So there's a lot of people that work very, very hard and they might get a little bit of money to kind of, compensate for all of their effort. But authorship is where you really step into your shoes of true, being somebody who develops something that where you could get paid for it again and again. So you're creating work that you can repeat, something that's repeatable and it's not tied to anybody else. So I'm going to just go through, money responds to clarity. And so that's why you really need to download the Spark Joy Method Guide, because I want you to be absolutely clear. And get a pen and paper, get a journal, or use AI, whatever it is, but go through the book and there could be gold from your past for your future. And I've actually got a podcast about that. So make sure you go through it and see, what gold are you already sitting on? Get clarity around what you already know. The market pays for perspective, not exhaustion. So when experience is owned, it becomes valuable. And when it's unnamed, it stays invisible. So the 4 movements. So I'm going to teach this actually as a whole sequence. I don't want it to be a checklist. And so what life has actually already trained you in. So what life's already trained you in, it's not education, it is experience. And some of your education, sure, you may have experience from it, but what I've found is that most people who get education, if I ask you what you got educated in 1998 and ask you to recite something, I'm sure that you would probably from a whole year maybe be able to tell me one thing if you could maybe remember, maybe you could tell me a mark you got or an assignment that you stayed up and crammed. But if I ask you what experience you had, not your education, you'll probably be able to fill pages of experience. So these are the 4 movements, okay? So what life's already trained you in, and then translating your experience into language. And this is where authority forms. And this can be really, really fun. So what life's already trained you in, and then you're going to translate that experience into language, and you can make it up. I mean, you can make it up fun, because I want to develop your ability to create intellectual property. And so you are a creator. And you may say, oh, well, Bonnie, I'm not very creative at all, but everybody is creative. So, and I can go through some of the ways that I would be able to name and translate this experience into language. So I have, one of the things that I named was my creme de la creme, which is about cream rises to the surface, and cream is the most, beautiful, rich fat, on top of the milk. It's the best bit of the product. And so I'm, attracting a group of people who want to be the best and they want to rise to the top. And so if you look at my marketing and how I'm attracting people into that, you'll see that I've been able to translate some of my experience and put language around it to invite other people to come along on the journey with me. So separating your identity from your roles. So I'm not my title, and even I'm not my insight. Creating work that fits your current capacity and season. So you don't have to suddenly, become, I don't know, go and buy a super yacht and become some, top entrepreneur or anything like that. And I love the book I've spoken about a lot, Julia Cameron and some of these creative teachers, which is, you don't have to do anything big and flashy. It may be that you want to step out and start to create work that fits your current capacity and season. Maybe you're a mom, and gosh, I worked with somebody who would take Zoom calls and she would coach other women online on Zoom like this, and she would have a baby in her arms like this, and she would be breastfeeding them. I'm pretending that's the baby while she coached them online. That fitted her current capacity. So you can just scale it wherever you want this to kind of fit. But yeah, this is about fit though. I do want you to think about creating work that fits your current capacity and season. So when you've created your you're thinking about those four things, the Smart Joy method, the four movements, which was the notice, what's life train you in. I'm just going to summarize it quickly. Translating your experience into language, and you can be creative with that, like I did, creme de la creme. Separating your identity from your role, so you're not your title. We're looking at your insight. So I really don't care if you're like, I was a school teacher. What are your insights? You influence young people, or, I want you to put different language around it as you look at the experience you've already had, and then looking at, creating work that fits your current capacity. Audience as a response. So audience is not built, it's gathered. And so this is a very important part of the work that I do, which is helping people take their, what life's already trained them in, and then creating intellectual property around it, and then identifying what's the audience. And so gathering an audience organically and through different methodologies, that audience is going to form around the clarity you get around what life's already trained you in. So people follow coherence, not output. And some of the distinctions that I like to make is that when you're visible, and I definitely help that too, just getting that confidence for visibility and what authentic visibility looks like so people can find you, it builds trust. Yeah, I did a few different marketing things when I was younger. So obviously I was a real estate agent, and I used to hand out thousands of flyers in people's letterboxes. My daughters would help me and to promote the properties that I was selling. But when I did that, I knew that the stats on me putting those flyers in people's letterbox was actually building attention and trust. So people would just get to know my name. Very few ever rang, just like it was not a lot. But even years later, I would be out and about and people would say, oh, you're that real estate agent, Bonnie Brown. So it just kind of placed the name. And so this is what we need to do, is building your audience and actually gathering, people around what, the thing that you have identified that you want to create in the world. So we're not really looking for followers, so to speak, because people be like, oh, well, how do I do social media? How do I do all that stuff? We're actually looking at creating an audience who resonates with what you're speaking about. So yeah, an audience actually isn't built just by like broadcasting and blah, blah, blah. It's actually built by recognition. People are like, actually, that's something I'm very interested in. I want to know more about that. I've definitely done that. Like even tonight, I saw something online about healthy kind of eating. It was like food that I was kind of interested in. And I was like, I definitely want to follow that person. Yeah. So just integrating and bringing permission. So where am I underutilized? What do people already come to me for? And what part of me is done shrinking? So yeah, it was very interesting in the beginning because obviously people have always asked me about my fashion, beauty, all these types of things. But also, I generally get people come to me to ask for advice or even deeper like issues, counseling, encouragement. And so, yeah, there's just no rush really, or no leap or any announcement needed. But it's just important to integrate and really just think, no one actually gives you permission to author your work. And so that moment actually happens internally. And so I kind of just let some of those things settle, and I realized actually what I really wanted to teach, even though I love fashion and beauty and all of those things, but me integrating was actually realizing that I actually wanted to bring people into a deeper transformation that was not just an external transformation, but an internal transformation, which would, have something to do with their work. Hence what this masterclass is about. Yeah, so Spark Joy really exists for people who are done outsourcing identity and ready to create work that reflects who they actually are now. So stay close. I want you to make sure you download that guide and enter the conversation. and definitely step into the room when you're ready. If you'd like to get on a call with me and talk to me about creme de la creme, there's 15 spots available. And yeah, you're not behind. You're early to your own authorship. I definitely want you to be the author of your own life, of your own ability, your potential. You should be in charge of it. You should be calling the shots, queen, king, and you're a leader. Everybody can be a leader, and I want you to be able to be influential in what you're carrying. So thank you so much for tuning into this masterclass. I'm your host, Bonnie Brown, and please come and follow me on social media, and we can continue the conversation there. Goodbye.